Welcome back to Tie and That Guy. I'm Wes Chatham, and this handsome fella on the other square screen is my good friend, sometimes lover, sometimes hugger. His name is Timothy Franck. Say hello, Ty. Ty might be a little grumpy because we might have got the times crossed, and he might have been deep in work writing his next best-selling novel or spending some Tinder time with his wife. But we had to pull him out of whatever he was doing, or maybe some alone stress relieving time. You know, we don't know. Because today we had to be very careful to be on time because we have a very, very special guest. Who's our guest, Ty?
I don't know. Who is this guy?
Well, you cast him.
Well, it's our famous one-armed belter.
Absolutely.
And you pronounce your first name Samer, right? Thank you.
Yeah, Samer.
I didn't want to mess that up. The mighty robot arm, the one-armed belter. 1/3 of the polycule.
Yep. Yeah, 1/5. The other two will get offended if we don't include them.
Well, I mean 1/3 of the later polycule.
Absolutely. Let me tell you, when I was reading that script in season 5, the last episode, and I'm waiting, I'm like, they're gonna fucking split us up. Who's staying and who's going? When I saw my name, I was like, man, I breathed a sigh of relief.
If doing that part and living in that culture, was there a party that's like, I could do this. This could work out for me, or were you like, this would be too much fucking work? Like, there's no way I could do this kind of
people. Holy fuck. I've thought about it for sure, but you read up on it and people fucking do it. And I think it would be a good experiment, but that's a lot of personalities to navigate.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine the horror of being married to both Vanessa and Kara? The horror of that,
right?
Yeah, well, I can't imagine a worse life.
I mean, 2 wasn't so bad, but maybe like 5 and 6, that's when you're pushing it.
Well, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, like where you grew up and how you got the acting bug, and when you started pursuing the career and everything.
So I was born and raised in Calgary, Alberta, in Canada, and I didn't start acting until pretty late. I like the typical immigrant story. I feel like it's so cliche, but my parents wanted me to be a doctor. Mm-hmm. So that was like the plan. And then I went into my first year of university, and I knew I didn't want to do it, but I didn't tell anybody. And I was still like super scared to pursue something in the arts. I was going to like change my major to English Lit in my second year. And then I go to the department to try to transfer, and they're like, yeah, none of your first year courses are going to count, so you have to start from scratch. And so I said, fuck that. And kept studying. I was taking a nursing and science degree. And then in my 4th year of school, I went and studied in Sweden. I did a semester abroad. And I was like drunk one night with my friends, and I'm like, guys, I think I'd really like to be an actor. And I'd never said it out loud to anybody before. Mm-hmm. And they're like, we think you'd be great at it. So I applied to a shitty acting school in Vancouver online. They just wanted to know that I could pay for it, really, more than anything else. And
what was the name of school? I'm just kidding.
I'm just kidding. I mean, you wouldn't have to do much research just to find out. But it was very like, I should have known when they interviewed me over the phone, because I was still in Sweden. And I got in. They didn't ask me to act. They didn't ask me to do anything. They just wanted to know if I could pay for it. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get loans. Don't worry. And then I finished my semester in Sweden, came back to Canada, told my parents I was moving away, and a month later I was in Vancouver. And then I did this class, and then started taking night classes like nonstop, and learned how to act, because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, to be honest. I was like,
well, how far did you get in school before you jumped ship and went down the acting career?
I finished my degree. So I did the 4 years. I finished my degree.
What was your degree?
Bachelor of Science in Nursing.
I do not understand. If I wanted to do that, I don't know if I would be able to do that. But to be able to do that and you don't want to do it, like when you're in class, like how do you not just pick up the desk and throw it through a wall? You know, is it? I mean, that must be the most frustrating, repressive kind of feeling in the world, that you have to do this kind of. This isn't where your heart is. This isn't, and it's not. It's not easy shit. Like you got to really put your head down and make it work. You know.
I didn't go to class very much. Like I was a bright kid, so. I really needed to put in minimal effort, and I still did well. But also I drank a lot, to be completely honest. I was like, I was having like the university life, and I was like having a good time. I'll be honest, I was fucking depressed because I was good at it too. Like even in my job at the hospital, and even when I worked as a nurse, I was good at it. I was good at like, I'm good with people. And it was actually, I didn't like fucking hate it. You know what I mean? It was, and I think if somebody told me I wasn't allowed to be an actor or like an artist, I would be a doctor or a psychiatrist or a surgeon. And I think I would love it. And I think it would be great. But
so you do have some interest in it. It wasn't like it was something that you completely didn't want to do. It's just you wanted to be an artist first.
Absolutely. Like it was like I could still see myself doing it if for some reason I wasn't allowed to do something in the arts. And I think I'd be good at it. And I find it fascinating still, like the human body and how it works. And even just like, man, the things that they can do now, the technology that keeps coming out and how good they are at making people better, you know? So I didn't like loathe it completely, but I knew I didn't want to, like my first practicum, the first year that you're in school, like you do a clinical in the hospital. And I'm like, man, I can't imagine coming here every fucking day.
And when you started studying acting, did it click? Was it easy for you? Like regular school was easy for you?
Yeah. You know what's funny? It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but I was getting it. I was learning quickly. I had no fucking idea what acting was. Like I loved like reading, I loved plays, but I thought, I'm charming and I can like, I got a shtick. I'll be able to go up and I'll do well. But I'm like, that's not what it is. Holy fuck. Like I got assigned my first monologue and to go perform it in front of a group of people. I had like a real vulnerability issue. Like I had a facade and a shtick that I would use to kind of like help me operate in the world. And that does not translate well into acting because then you're acting as shit. If you're like,
well, it's interesting because I remember like when I first started studying acting, you would have some people come in that have a background like you, like they were going to medical school or they were doctors or they were lawyers or they kind of had something where they were using the other side of the brain. And they would come in and they would apply the technique that's always been successful for them. They were good students, right? They would do the studying, they would do the thing, and they were so hyper controlled sometimes that it stifled their creativity. It stifled their ability to perform. So it was. It's interesting because it's a different side of the brain. You need to work as hard, and the other thing is be as disciplined. There's the ability to work hard and let go at the same time.
Absolutely. It's like, it's fucking alchemy when it happens, like when it really happens for real, because there is so much. I'm still very much, like I wasn't a studier in school. I didn't study very much.
Yeah.
But now with acting, I'm like a fucking nerd because if I don't know that I've prepared a ton, I'll have anxiety and then I won't be able to be free. So it sounds so cliche and you hear actors say it all the time, but it's like I prepare so much or just so that I can let it go. Even if I fall off the rails, because I've done so much work beforehand, at some point I have checkpoints along the way. I'll get back on track at some point. But if I haven't done that, then my fucking work is super controlled and super like, and it's funny, I thought, it's so humbling because I thought the more I did it and the more experience I had, that would change. I wouldn't have to try as hard. It wouldn't be as difficult, but it's still, I had to like make peace with the fact that it's always going to be work for me. Not always hard, not always like difficult, but I'm always going to have to put in the time. I'm never going to be that person who just rocks up and like you know what I mean? Can throw down. I'm like, no, I need to prepare beforehand because then I'll feel free. Then I won't have the anxiety of failing.
I don't think that person exists. I think people try to pawn themselves into that. I don't think the person exists. Now, if somebody is performing within their own personality, then they can do that. Like if Jonah Hill's being Jonah Hill or Will Ferrell's doing the thing that he does, then they can have that freedom. They can show up and kind of have the lines and whatever, and they can play and do all that. But if they were going to do something opposite of themselves or so really have to stretch for something, they're going to have to work at it too. They're going to have to put that work in and have that context understanding. Is there like a lot of actors in Toronto? Is that kind of their path? Like, do they kind of gravitate towards LA or do they go to New York or do they stay in Toronto? Or do they come back? Do they go and do it and then they come back?
I think it depends, honestly. It's a matter of like, can you get your visa? You need to get your working visa to go down there. And then once you do, everybody goes down to LA for a little stint to get a manager, to get agents and stuff. Because you want American rep because so much of what happens in Canada, they're releasing shit to the American side. And then afterwards, they'll release some stuff to the Canadian side, but sometimes only American casting is seeing it. So you need American rep if you want to like advance in your career.
Yeah.
But you know what? COVID has changed fucking everything because you don't need to be anywhere now. Like even while I was in LA, I was auditioning a ton, but I didn't go into a single room. So
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing that I've been kind of, it kind of changes the way things work, because as soon as I was able, I lived in LA for a long time, but as soon as I was able, or as soon as I realized like I can live anywhere, I got out of there.
Awesome.
And what's crazy is like as soon as I left, then I left and then COVID hit, and then everything was on tape anyway. So it was like I never felt like I missed. And then
win.
yeah, and so now it's like I can live where I want, do what I want, and then I work in LA. I'm working in LA like I worked in LA, and it's kind of like then you get everything taken care of when you're working there, in terms of like running people that, and again, like it's like a battle of attrition, right? So I do have some really great friends there, and I've had some really good experience. I had a great friend group, and I had a really, LA was good to me. I can't like say it isn't, but the culture and the atmosphere and the power hike, eventually it'll get to you. Eventually, you'll one day you'll wake up and be like, "Am I an asshole?"
Right?
Did it get to me?
100%. And I think the thing is like, it's not about the art down there. So I think for me, I can speak for myself, and that's it. If I were to spend too long there, my acting would suffer.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because it's more about
100%. Yeah,
the hype and the going to the parties, and it's so weird because there is some amazing, like, to be there and to take acting classes there with the people there is like you're going to the source, Hey, do you ever go to like New York, and is that like another alternative for Toronto actors to go to New York? Yeah,
or you guys...
I mean, funny enough, I actually wanted to go. That's where I wanted to go to begin with, and then I had signed with a manager in the state in LA, and he goes, "Come to LA for a year. Just come for a year, and then go wherever the fuck you want." But I think in terms of like pace, just in terms of culture of a city, New York is definitely more my vibe. And there's like you can go see a play any day of the week that'll knock your socks off,
Yeah.
But I think LA is, again, like what we're told is like that's where you need to go. You need to go there for a little while, for 6 months or a year, and then and it'll help you get to the next level in your career. I don't know how true that is, to be honest. Like we were saying, COVID, I think maybe changed all of that.
Yeah, but I mean, I think, that was certainly like you can start to make more of a mark or your presence with the casting people in LA and going to meet different people. I don't know now, because if nobody's taking meetings or if they're not reading people in rooms, I think now the most effective thing, like always, is just to do good work. To do good work, just to do, be undeniable in your work, undeniable in your tapes, undeniable in the roles that you do get. Once you're undeniable, it'll start to get people's attention.
Absolutely. And it's like, I found, this is the thing that I've been telling myself on repeat all the time. It's like, that's what's going to give me longevity in any career. It's like, because especially in this business, you see how people like rise up and then fizzle out because, you're no longer the person of the moment. But if your work is always good and you're always getting better, people are going to want to work with you. Because at the end of the day, regardless of all like the money and the hype and all that, I think people actually want to make art. Like, people who are writing and directing.
But if people fizzle out, it's because, sometimes they might have gotten a break because of some other element, like they're fine acting, but they're, super handsome or super pretty or super something like that. And
or they're perfect casting for a part.
Yeah, or perfect casting. So you can have a moment, but if you don't put the time in the craft, if you don't have a craft or a technique that you can really be your foundation in a level of talent and understanding, then you're going to fizzle out. Then it's going to, people say flash in the pan. Oh, it happens flash in the pan every time. Jack Nicholson could still work right now if he wanted to, and he's 187 years old because he not only is he brilliant, but he's really put in the time. I mean, he was a true student of acting and the craft of acting, and it wasn't easy to him. I mean, he didn't work for many years in Hollywood. He came from the school of the hard knocks. And so then he just kept working and working and working, and he just got better and better and better, and then it hit for him. How did you first hear about The Expanse?
By auditioning for it. So I would always go online actually and see what was shooting, because they have you can search for any city and be like, what's shooting, and the union will have a list of all the projects. So I'd make a list of the projects and who was casting it and be like, okay, I need to see these casting directors, A, B, C, and D. And then I auditioned for it a couple of times. I think maybe once or twice before I auditioned for Joseph, and I didn't get the part. Thank fuck, because they were smaller. They were smaller roles, like 1 or 2 episode roles, like tiny crew members. And then I got the audition for Joseph because the other characters that I auditioned for weren't belters. And then I got this audition, and then I just went on YouTube, like watched videos of Kara to try to like figure out what the sound was like, and then did the audition. Then I got the call back, so I started watching more of it. Like I had no idea what the show was, and it's funny. Like I tell everybody now, I had no idea there were books beforehand either. When something's billed as like a fantasy or sci-fi or whatever, I used to say, I've never watched sci-fi. I was never really, but I'm like, it's not. That's such a limiting way to define what it was, because it's not. People think sci-fi and they think Star Trek and only Star Trek, But Expanse was very much not that. And then I booked the part, read all the books, and started watching it, and that's kind of how I got to know the show.
Did you know Kara? Oh, because it seems like every working actor in Toronto knew Kara.
No, I was in Vancouver for 5 years before I came to Toronto, and then I was there for maybe it was 2 or 3 years. So by the time I got to Toronto, I think Kara had left. Kara was in LA.
Yeah, because I know she did a lot of stage work in Toronto, and so if you've ever been on stage in Toronto, you've done something with Kara. Like everybody we would hire, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, I know her. I did a play with her 4 years ago or whatever."
Yeah, she's awesome. Everybody loves Kara. I was going to say I didn't really do any theater in Toronto either. Just I did one play, Glass Menagerie, but that was the only play I'd ever done, and it was.
Were you the gentleman caller?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ty, what were you, Narain, and everybody? What were you looking for in terms of putting together this polyamorous relationships? Like, was there certain chemistry? Was there a certain what were the parameters? Were you just kind of was it the strategist kind of get people that really work and be believable together, or what was your goals in creating that?
I didn't work on the polycule casting a lot. I don't remember who produced the first block with the polycule in it. I'm not sure it was me. I don't think it was. But I remember seeing all the headshots of everybody, and one of the things we talked about is we wanted to make sure, one, that it had a lot of representation from a lot of different cultures. It didn't just look like 5 white guys and Kara. We didn't want that. But at the same time, there's the danger of it winds up feeling very sort of tokenish, where people joke about the United Colors of Benetton, it's like there's the black guy and the Chinese guy, and where it feels very sort of these are the most generic token sort of here's how you do representation. It needed to feel like a bunch of people that could reasonably have come together that both had representation and felt natural and real at the same time. In the script, there was no sort of defined, this person is this ethnicity or whatever. It was, let's find a group of really interesting looking people and put them together. The one thing that was true of, at least of Joseph's part, is he's supposed to be pretty. Yeah, we were looking for somebody who was pretty. And you got to say, let's face it, when you get cast off of those abs.
Oh, thanks. Man, holy smoke. You got to thank Jeremy Benning for that. That key light set me up for success, I'm telling you.
Angled it perfectly to give you maximum ab shadow.
That day I was, Anya ordered a cheesecake truck. I'm like, fuck. I went to a piece of this cheesecake and I put them in the trailer. And as soon as they yelled cut on that shot, went to my trailer.
Yeah, crushed that cheesecake.
Within 10 minutes, his abs were gone.
It's so funny. We were hanging out at lunch, and Kara had brought her kid, and Dom and Frankie were in the trailer. We were all hanging out. They're like, Samer, you can just have some cake. It's not going to change anything in half an hour. I'm like, nope. I'm like, it will. I swear to God, it will. And even if it's just from my own head, I'm like, yeah, this is going to be forever. This is going to be on film forever. I can wait 20 minutes to eat a piece of cheesecake.
You know what's funny is the thing is when somebody sees a shirtless scene or something in a movie, the actor saw that, he read that script a couple of months ago, and he's like, fuck. And then he just starts thinking about it every day.
1,000 crunches a day for 3 months.
Every time.
Can't be boozing, can't be doing anything like that. And then what's happened is it's kind of turned into an arms race, because you think about if you think about Harrison Ford and Indiana Jones, right? Like, you know, he's got this great body, but it's a man's body. It's like a guy that just works for a living, and it's, you know, he's not doing curls or whatever. And now, no matter what the part is, like a guy can be like a guy could be. The thing that kind of throws me off is a guy could be like, he could work at Dunkin' Donuts. He can make donuts and all of a sudden he takes his shirt off and looks like a superhero. Right. And so like the whole representation, like, you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like an arms race because of superhero movies, you know, no matter what people's job is, whatever, it's like that moment, like, poof, like taking their shirts off.
Immediately. I know the expectation has gotten so, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not Harrison Ford and Indiana Jones anymore, you know? And you know the biggest is when they put your fucking shot at the end of the day. Like,
oh, that's the worst.
Right?
That is the worst. Did you have a good time on the Expanse, dude? It's a warm set, right? When you walk on?
Fuck. You know, I was telling Lewin this. Have
you seen him lately, Lewin?
No. The last time I saw him was at the rap party. When the premiere for us, when they showed us the first couple episodes in Toronto. I love him. He's awesome. No, I was telling Lewin, because it was the first big show I booked. Like, it was the first, anything I'd done before that was an episode, and it was the first time I'd been there for a season. And I'm like, oh, this is how movie sets are, or TV sets are. This is how it goes when you're. And then I rocked up to another set, and I'm like, oh, it's not how it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I loved it, and it was a beautiful first experience to have, and it changed my life truly, because it gave me the resume to start booking bigger things, which was so thank you. I loved it. Everyone was so awesome.
It's funny because we had so Steven and I, you know, we've been around for a little while, and there's, you know, a lot of brand new, you know, there's some first time actors, you know, their first kind of show. Mm-hmm. You know, you start to get to season 4, season 5, they're kind of like, maybe I'm ready to do something. I mean, you know, maybe I'm over it. And Steven were like, no, you're not. It's fucking cold out there. All right. This is where you want to be. This is where you want to be. This is the most fun, the coolest, warmest, most collaborative set. Mm-hmm. You know, we get so much creative input, everything. You ride this one till the wheels fall off, you know?
Absolutely. And everyone, you know, so singular so far in my experience is that everybody who was on the show, part of it, in front of it and behind, everyone was so fucking gung-ho. Everyone was a nerd about the show, which made it so awesome. There was no cynicism or complaining, or everyone just wanted to make something really beautiful, and it was so awesome. I loved it. I don't have that gear where I could work on something. I mean, I think I don't, where I could work on something every day that I think is a piece of shit. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have any motivation or any creative pool. And sometimes if I'm working on, if I'm doing something on somebody else's show, or, you know, you're on the show, and if I hear them making fun of their own show, then I'm like, this is the worst feeling ever. I how could you show up for work every day if you don't believe in it, believe that you're creating something great? I mean, that's how you start to hate your life a little bit, you know? Yeah. Steven and I talk about this all the time when we read the scripts of The Expanse, and then we were the books, and the first season, Steven and I felt like we saw what the potential of what The Expanse could be. Mm-hmm. Now, at the time, there was a lot of sci-fi shows shooting in Toronto, and I think that The Expanse was in a different class. I felt it before we even started shooting one frame, and meaning this is what my ambition was. This is what my dream for The Expanse was. Yeah. And so sometimes you would get, you know, day players or guest stars that would come on, and you could tell that they probably didn't read the books or kind of familiarize themselves with the material, kind of know what was going on. They're just like, oh, it's another sci-fi show shooting in Toronto. We're going to show up. Mm-hmm. And it drove me crazy because Steven and I thought we were shooting, you know, Citizen Kane. Yeah. And, these guys are coming in and being like, oh, can we just beam up this thing? And it's like, shut your fucking mouth. You know?
I don't mind if an actor has a one day, you know, if they're a day player, I don't mind that. What drives me crazy is when you hire a director and they're like, well, don't we have transporters in this or something? And you're like, dude, do a minimum of preparation. Yeah. Come in at least knowing what the show is.
That's one thing that was awesome about working with Anya. She was the biggest nerd for the show.
Anya was great. Anya had been a fan of the show since season 1. and I think had tried to get on the show multiple times. And I was really thrilled when they finally got her in the door. Yeah.
Anya's the exact kind of director you want, that comes in, knows her shit, who's enthusiastic and passionate about. She's the technical side and the creative side. She knows how to communicate and talk with actors. And I think by the time we got to season 6, we were pretty tight with our directors, except Breck. He kept slipping in. But other than that.
Yeah, how was it for you guys? Because you were on there for 6 seasons. How was it when a director came in for like the first time later on in the seasons and like was directing you? How did you find that?
Later on in the seasons, it got we were able to kind of select directors, and we reused a lot of the directors that we really clicked with. But early on, it was frustrating because The Expanse is it can be a complex story and complex characters. Some directors would show up, that what we were kind of talking about earlier, and they would say, hey, how about Amos say this during this thing? And it's like, it's like, there's no, that's like, there's no way he would say that or do that. You're lacking understanding of the character. And,
well, I'm not, obviously I've never acted, so I don't know if it's the same impulse, but I know on the other side of the camera, when people haven't done any prep, they tend to immediately reach for the most broad trope. So, it's like, if you don't really dig into the material and figure out who these characters are, people see Amos, they go, oh, he's the tough guy. So then they go for the tough guy, like he's threatening people and he's growling at people and he's throwing his weight around that way, which is the opposite of what Amos is, but it's like the tropey version, right?
The obvious choice is the one that's on the top, and like you can tell that somebody hasn't done work if they're going for the superficial option all the time.
Yeah, and we would see that occasionally where somebody like, well, why wouldn't they just do this? And it's like, well, if you had spent any time looking into the show, you would know that person doesn't do that. But it was they I could say, oh, they've plugged this character into this like generic slot, and that's the thing that generic character does. So that's what they're reaching for. And that always drove me nuts because Wes and I have talked about this before. Everybody else is working so hard. When it becomes clear that one person isn't doing the work, it pisses me off.
Well, this is the thing that drives me nuts. Is like wouldn't you want to do the work because it becomes so obvious? It becomes like it sticks out like a sore thumb when everyone around you is doing the specific thing, and you're painting in broad strokes, But can't control what people are going to do.
So tell us a little bit about your character and a little bit about your arc.
Yeah. So Joseph was like the lover of the family. He was like very much the when you guys gave us the first day when we were sitting around the table after we got cast, we got like a little breakdown of each character, and they said he was like a Henry David Thoreau or something like that, like very poetic, very like a hippie almost, a space hippie. And then as things move further along in season 6, he becomes like very militarized after the family breaks up, and I think becomes a little bit harsher and just colder because you got to see what war does to a person, I think. And so by the end of it, he's a lot more like cold or harsh, or like the love's kind of been beat out of him a little bit. I mean, it's obviously still there, and he's doing so much of what he's doing was out of like fear and love for his family and a desire to protect, but it kind of snuffed out the softy that I thought he was earlier in season 5, who just wanted to salvage shit and have sex with his husbands and wives.
I always got the sense, and this is partly from the scripts, but it's also partly from the way you guys played it. I always got the sense that for Joseph, the death of Willix's character hit him particularly hard. I think Joseph really takes that to heart, where he's like, oh, if we're not fighters now, this is what's going to happen to the rest of our family.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was so fucking awesome to get to explore that in season 6, because that happens at the end of season 5. And up until then, I think he's like super copacetic. He's like, hey, let's go with the flow. Let's go with the flow. I don't want no trouble, I think was Joseph's perspective. And then that happens and he goes, well, there's no choice. And I think that's why my interpretation of it is that he stays with the drummer. Because he's like, now we got to do it. He like becomes like a fucking man. Because in my mind, especially when I read the books too, like there's so many beautiful lines where they're like super poetic and like intangible, And then it kind of, when Willix dies, it's like a slap in the face a little bit. It's like, okay, no, you got to like get down to brass tacks. This is the reality of what's happening now. And I think that's kind of what changes him fundamentally.
When you said like, okay, like he's a man now, is that part of what he developed into because of these experiences? What was he like before? Did he need, was it a part of growing up for him?
I mean, I think so. I think like there was a naivety earlier on in the sense that all these things are going on. Like you think about life, it's like we know that wars happen. We know that these people are like, there's like a forever conflict with the Martians and the Earthers and the Belt and whatever. But I think he'd found his like safe space, his like little nest of comfort with his family, despite all these things that were happening around them. And he's like, you know what? This is my slice of life and it's okay. I accept it. This is good. I'm happy. We have food to eat. We got like shelter in our ship. Life is good. This is enough. And then like the Reaper comes knocking and he's like, oh, fuck. Like I was so naive before to think that I didn't have to stand up and say something or that I didn't have to, you know, it's like the thing is happening. You don't want to get involved because you're like, this doesn't affect me. And then he had no choice. And then he kind of had to like, I hate the expression man up, you know, but he had to
grow up,
face the circumstances that were in front of him.
Last podcast, we did the episode where you got your arm ripped off.
Nice.
That was a fantastic scene. What was that? Man. Did you have a good time shooting that?
That was fucking awesome. I loved it. It's funny because when we
was Anya directing that one.
Yeah, she did 4 and 5. Both of those episodes were so fun to shoot. I really wanted so badly like a shoot 'em up scene. I'd never done one before, and so I saw because they sent us at the beginning of the season because we shot. Well, you guys shot episodes 1 and 6 first, right? So the middle scripts weren't done, so they sent us kind of like an outline of what was going to happen. Yeah. And I remember reading it and like it's talking about my arm getting chopped off, and I have this like shit-eating grin on my face. I'm like so excited to film it. But yeah, it was awesome. We did they did such a good job with the prosthetic too. It looked so fucking real. And we did a bunch of like rehearsals beforehand so they can get the logistics right. Yeah. And then like 3 days before that, I got fucking sick. And I'm like, please God, don't be COVID, please. And they were testing me 3 times a week and it wasn't COVID, but I had like no fucking voice. I could feel it going. And we sat in that, like, because my arm, they had cut a hole in the ground and there was like a hole in the back of my suit. So my arm was underground, like under the plywood. And then we had the fake arm coming out of the arm of the spacesuit with the prosthetic caught under the bin or whatever. And so we were there for like 10 hours, just like sitting there getting all those shots and all the angles and stuff. And it was awesome. I was scared in the back of my mind that I was going to lose my voice. I'm like, fuck. But no, we got through it.
You should have came on like with your shirt tied up and your arm taped behind your back, and then we could say like, you know, there was an accident and something fell on your arm, and so we decided to use it. You know, and you lost your arm for your arm.
Yeah, my arm has been crushed. Use it.
How fucked up would we be? Yeah, use it. But I don't have an arm. This is great. This is the great performance you've ever done. This is art, man.
So as a trained nurse, were you giving advice to the crew on how it would really be done? Or
absolutely not. I mean, to be completely honest, like thank God for living in in Canada. I've never had to.
You never had to saw anybody's arm off?
Deal with that shit. I wouldn't even know. No, I'm like, you know what? One thing I saw that was like. I've seen people in surgery. I've seen people like pretty like sick or whatever. But I remember one day I walked into a patient's room. This is a segue, whatever. But it was when I first started.
Did you kill her? What if the story was like, and then I took a pillow and I put it over her head and I held it there until her lifeless body went cold. And then he's like, then I knew that being a nurse was not for me.
It was not for me. And then
he just let it there. We're like, oh shit. You know, don't worry. I didn't give her name. You'll never know who it was.
Anyway, there was a patient and this woman was calling for like a glass of water or adjust my pillow or this and that. And she had like a bowel surgery, like a stomach surgery. And then she calls again and I walk in and there's like blood all over her.
Oh my God.
Stomach.
Oh shit.
Yeah, there's like blood everywhere. I'm like, fuck. And I'm like, hey, how's it going? She's like, yeah, can you just get me a sip of water? She had no idea. I lift up her gown and the staples in her stomach had gone and her intestines are sitting on her stomach.
Oh my God.
Yeah, like the
Oh
staple.
my gosh.
She was coughing so hard that it
Oh
blew,
no.
and she was a little overweight, and it blew the staples off the
Oh.
like out of the incision, and so that was like that's when you gotta like be like you gotta act quick. But in terms of the arm stuff, I'm like they know what they're doing. They've done their research.
In
Yeah.
honor of Samer, so at the end of usually at the end of our episodes, we do a top 5, right? Like our
Yeah.
top 5, usually in movie history. But in honor of you, we're gonna do the top 5 male figures in movies. So we got to pick our favorite ones because Samer had them abs
What
just
is
rippling
what
all
does
over
Rick
the
and Morty
place.
call them? Cum gutters. He had the cum gutters.
And but I think they should be in the film. So like it can't just be Chris Evans. It's got to be, so it's like Brad Pitt in Fight Club, or Chris Evans in the first Captain America, or
Carl Weathers in
Carl Weathers in
anything.
Predator. Yeah, Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse. My personal favorite is Brad Pitt Fight Club. I think that's
a good
I'll
one.
argue that with any one of you guys.
I do love some Fight Club Brad Pitt, but I gotta say, Mickey from Snatch is right up there with him, man. Mickey is shredded up, dude.
Because a lot of people probably go to Troy, right?
Oh,
Troy,
damn, that was like
yeah. But I think there's something about Brad Pitt and Fight Club that just like something about the sweltness and the way that he moved. Yeah, so if we're going to choose one Brad Pitt, I would argue Fight Club. You would argue Snatch over that?
I mean, I think it's equally as good.
Samer, you're our tiebreaker. What do you think?
I say Fight Club because I've never seen Snatch.
Really?
Yeah. So
You should watch movies sometimes.
And Hugh Jackman in Wolverine.
And
But
Logan.
the
Yeah, that was nuts.
Logan. Yeah, Logan. Did you ever see that movie with Denzel Washington and John Lithgow was the bad guy? I think it's called Ricochet, maybe that's the name of it.
I think was it Ricochet that it was John Lithgow?
I think it was. And Denzel takes he has to strip down. He's at the fairground.
He
He's got to
strips down to
strip
show
down.
that he doesn't have a gun. Yep.
Yeah, it doesn't have a gun. Dude, that was like the first Denzel. He was stacked in that.
Like, we totally objectify actors, but we do it to the dudes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I didn't even think about it. This is kind of objectifying.
We're totally
huh?
objectifying poor Samer.
Oh.
I was watching so that like on YouTube there's like these channels that how people watch and analyze old terrible B movies and stuff. And they were watching an older Dolph Lundgren movie, and he's shirtless in that. And I'm like, that guy was just a fucking specimen.
Yeah, dude, he was. I mean, Rocky IV.
Dolph
was on
Lundgren
point,
back in the day was just a specimen.
Is that the guy in Rocky?
the Russian.
Yeah. Or you know who too? Ryan Reynolds in Blade.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he was.
That was
that was
next level.
was peak Ryan Reynolds. But I will say there's something about Momoa, because Momoa is like in good shape, but it looks like he drinks beer too.
And
so
I
it's
have drank beer with Jason Momoa, so I know that is true.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's something like that I like about it's almost like he works out, but he's not overly concerned with it. Like he's not dieting.
There's
like
two versions of Jason, because there's like Game of Thrones Jason, where he's big, but like you say, he looks like he'll have a beer occasionally. He's not all shredded up. And then there's like when he got sucked into the superhero world, and suddenly he's playing Aquaman, and then he just gets shredded. He got shredded for Aquaman.
I feel like it's like a prerequisite. It's probably in the contract, because even for what's the new Black Panther? Yeah, the new one's out, and there's the guy who plays like the villain in the new one, and because he wasn't shredded next level, people tore him apart.
Really?
Yeah, people were like, "Oh, how could he be in a Marvel movie and he doesn't have like a 20-pack or something?" And he's completely believable as this like villain underwater like superhero. But yeah, people are cutthroat.
Dude, I think Hemsworth in this last Thor was like, I mean, he was jacked out of his mind. You remember when they like ripped his clothes off and he was all chained up in the thing? It's like, Jesus Christ. Like it's like he like grew into Thor. It's like the first year he did like the first movie, second movie, third movie. Then you're like, damn, did he morph into actual Thor? Is he actually Thor now?
Yeah, no, he was next level, that guy. You know what's
Yeah.
funny? Logan, Hugh Jackman. I was
Yeah.
working in Vancouver, and there was the makeup artist who worked on Logan was doing my makeup, and she goes, he had a guy that like he was the nicest guy, but he had like when his trainer was there, like he was so dehydrated, he had a guy telling him like when and what he could put in his mouth in order to like be that shredded because he was like,
Oh, Hugh Jackman.
yeah, for
Yeah.
Logan.
So Hugh Jackman's doing Wolverine again. He's like, CGI motherfuckers. I'm done. I am done.
Honestly, good for
I mean,
him.
it is incredibly unhealthy to look like that.
Yeah.
Well, even in terms of like being that dehydrated, I've never done it hardcore. I've never like taken. I just try not to eat anything shitty the day before and no cheesecake day of. You know what I mean? But dehydrating yourself that way, like, what's it going to do to your brain? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're probably not going to be yourself that day.
Yeah. Is there anybody on this list, Samer? And you're our guest. Is there anybody that like? What do you think is the ideal? Is it Pitt?
I think Pitt and Troy, to be honest, was probably like if I was doing a movie and I'm like I need to be camera ready, I'd look Brad Pitt and Troy.
Pitt's got 2 of them, and he could have 3 with Snatch.
Or Daniel Craig. Daniel Craig in Casino Royale. I'm like, maybe I just love Daniel Craig as Bond. I think he's like...
Yeah, he's a great Bond. All right, that's our top 5. Brad Pitt, Snatch, Fight Club, Troy, Hugh Jackman, Logan, Jason Momoa, Aquaman, Chris Hemsworth, Thor, Love of Ragnarok. No, it's the newer Thor.
Love and Thunder.
Love and Thunder. Daniel Craig, Casino Royale with cheese. Thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you, Samer, to our guest.
Thanks for having me, guys.
I'm a little upset I didn't make the list.
Well, we're not. We are technically not allowed to be on the list.
Right.
Exactly.
People that are on this podcast.
Yeah.
So because we're choosing the people, that like. Yeah, and the thing is like it's one of those things where you're watching a movie and you're like, and it just comes out of nowhere and you're like, Jesus Christ, that guy, that kind of catches you out of everywhere. It's like, Pitt and Fight Club. You're like, everybody after you see Fight Club, everybody's like, everybody's watching.
You're really sitting there fucking eating popcorn, shoving popcorn in your mouth. You're like, I'm gonna sit down. Slow down just a little bit.
Yeah. And you know what the thing of it is, you talk about Ty, like how it's unhealthy to look like that. The reality is like Pitt doesn't work that hard to have that. Like he's probably not starving himself like that. And then if there's somebody that's doing like a major transformation, like who's the guy that he was a comedic actor? He was on
Kumail Nanjiani, that guy.
Yes.
Yeah. The Eternals, like that was next level.
Yeah, I mean, and he like completely transformed himself.
He didn't just get shredded up; he got swole too. Like, yeah,
like he put on like 50 pounds and then got shredded, which was nuts.
Yeah,
Hassan Minhaj has a freaking hilarious. I don't know if you guys have seen his new Netflix special. He goes, "Us South Asian guys could be." We could get by on the I'm skinny and I'm smart and I'm funny, and then Kumail Nanjiani went and fucked it for all of us, and now my wife is like,
it was so radical. It looked like a bad Photoshop where the wrong head was on the wrong body, or like somebody had clipped his head and put it on the body of like a bodybuilder weightlifter or something. It was so weird,
right? Even his face.
Yeah,
it was nuts. I mean, that's science right there. It's crazy how good people have gone at like body hacking.
This was a great time, Samer. It was good to see you, man. Thank you for
too, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming out and spending time with us.
Pleasure.
Say goodbye, Ty.
Goodbye, Ty.